Hello, in this instruction video I will guide you through the installation of an Ubuntu host running Apache, PHP with a MySQL or Postgresql database, which is required to operate the SDN SecureSuite applications. It is important that the Ubuntu host is connected to the internet so that it can obtain the necessary software. So let's start with the installation. It's just going to be like a standard English installation. So hit install Ubuntu server and continue with the English version US. Don't want to detect the keyboard layout, just select the default keyboard, detecting some hardware, network cards and stuff. Okay, so let's give the Ubuntu host a name. And create a root user for accessing. And a password. I don't want to encrypt my home folder. I'm getting the time from the Ftp server, so this means that I have a internet connection which is active. That's good news. So now it's detecting the hard drives. So let's select the guided use entire disk and setup LVM. Okay, write the changes to the disk. So I've got an 8 gig hard drive here, and I'm just assigning the full size here, writing the changes. And now it's installing the system. So in this installation we're not using a proxy, so we can just hit enter. And now it's retrieving all the applications that you can install. So when the system installs all the software and modules, it's prompting whether you want to do automatic updates. So I'm selecting no automatic updates for now, and what you can do then later on is with the apt-get update command on the system you can perform the updates manually. So with the software selection, so what we're going to do is I'm going to install the OpenSSH server. I'm gonna install the LAMP server. So LAMP will be Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So this is if you want to run just MySQL as a database backend, but I'm also going to show you how you can run this application with PostgreSQL. Just to make it easy, I'm going to install the MySQL server, and I'm going to install the PostgreSQL server so that you can later on choose which database server you want to use. So hitting enter, and we're entering the MySQL root password. Just repeat it, and it's continuing to install all the software modules. Once the module installation is finished, we can install the grub bootloader into the master boot record. And that's it. So that kind of completes the standard Ubuntu installation. Of course, we have to do some tweaking and adding some stuff in order to get everything up and running and working. So what I'm going to do here is just reboot the Ubuntu host. And you can see that's booting now. It's loading all the modules. getting into the login screen. So what we have to do now is we have to log in as the user that we created during the install. That's it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sudo the super user the root password. So this is something that you would normally not do in a live environment, but just to make things easy, I want to avoid entering the sudo command every time. So I would just do a sudo password, setting the root password, and I'm going to set a new password for the root user. So what I can do now is I can now log in as root, and I'm logged in as root now. So the first step after installing is I want to do an update on the applications. So that's running for a couple of minutes, so it's doing the update now. And now we have to customize the Ubuntu host. We have to do go through quite some steps. So first what we're going to do is we're going to install an FTP server so that we can copy all the scripts onto the application server. We need to make some tweaks to the Apache server. We have to do some stuff on the databases, so I'm going to show you some Mysql and Postgresql configuration steps that we have to go through. We have to install some PHP modules. So for example, we need to install a curl, the curl extension, the SNMP extension, and we have to configure the cron job. So there's going to be a scheduler configured on the Ubuntu host, which is scheduled to run a script each, I would say each minute. So let's start off with the FTP server. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the Pro FTP server application. So we're going to do apt-get install Pro FTP daemon. So it's getting that from the internet. We're going to do a standalone installation. Okay, so there are some steps to configure Pro FTP and get it working. So one of the things is what I'm going to do with Pro FTPD is I'm setting the default root entry. So this means that all users that are logging in will have root access. So again, also this is something that you typically would not do in an application on an application server, but you know, it's just to make things easy. I'm going to do that. I'm a little bit lazy from that perspective. So I'm going to edit the configuration file, and I'm going to scroll down to the default root entry. I'm going to unmark the default root entry. So Control O for save, Control X for exit. There you go. Okay. And I'm just going back one folder. I'm going to edit the shells. And I'm going to add another line here. /bin/false. Again, Control O, Control X. So let's see if the FTP folder already exists. Yeah, folder is already there. And I'm going to create a user now. Give it a password. That will be the home folder. -d. And set the shell to /bin/false. Okay, yeah, so it says that the user already exists. So the installation of Pro FTP already created that user. And just to make sure that the password is correct, I'm just gonna change it again. And then I'm gonna stop and start customer service, and that should get your Pro FTP server running. So let's see if we can access the application server. So the first thing that we have to do is check the IP address, obviously. So that one is 192.168.0.204. Let's see if we can FTP to it. 204. Username will be FTP with the given password, and that's it. So we have access to the FTP server. So what we can do now is we can copy the scripts. So I will open another Explorer here, and I will copy the scripts onto the FTP server. Just Control C and Control V. So now it's copying everything. Once everything's copied, we can check out the Ubuntu host. Let's go to the FTP folder and let's check out. So all the files are in there. So what we now can do is we can copy the scripts to the Apache default folder. So what I'm going to do is copy *-r to HTML. So this would be the var/www/html folder is the default Apache folder where the documents are. Copying everything. I'm going to do a recursive copy, so that's including the subfolders, and see if that goes. So if we go to /var www.html, all the scripts should be there. There you go. So that's it for the scripts. So let's go to the next step, which is installing the PHP modules. Okay, so forgot a couple of things. So before we go into PHP, we have to do some tweaking on the scripts. So in the scripts there is a folder and there's a file that we have to change the access rights to. So there's one file in the inc folder which is called config.php. The config.php contains configuration information, and when you install the application, when you install the SecureSuite application, it has to write information into that file. So what I have to do, if I have to change the access rights, so what I'm going to do here is I just change it to 777, and that's the config.php file. The other thing that we have to change is that the SecureSuite application allows you to backup and restore database information. So there's a folder called backup, and that folder obviously also needs write access for the, in order to allow your backup to run. So I'm gonna change mod 777 on the backup folder as well. And then finally, so what you have in Apache is that the default script or file that is loaded if you go to a website is the index.html. So what you'll see is that the index.html file still exists. So, but we don't want to have the index.html running by default. So it's the index.php that we want to run by default. So what we have to do is we're going to remove the index.html, and there's a file in the root folder called htaccess, and I'm going to make some changes there so that the default file that's loaded if you open the website will be the index.php. So let's nano htaccess, and now we have to create an entry in here called directory index, and we have to provide the index.php here. Save it and then exit. So we're going to restart the Apache server later on, and then it will use this index.php as default file. So onto PHP now. We're going to install some PHP 5 extensions. So there are some required extensions that we need for the application, which is curl and SNMP, and there's also some optional ones. That's the SSH and the LDAP extension. But in this setup, I'm going to add all the extensions that we can use and need for this application. So have to get PHP 5 curl. So the SNMP module. And then for the SSH2 module, we have to install the library and then the PHP extension for SSH2. So apt-get install lib SSH2 dev, and then the PHP extension. PHP. Okay, so if we're running Postgresql, we also have to install the Postgresql extension for PHP 5. So that's PHP 5 PGSQL. And then finally the LDAP extension for PHP. 5 LDAP. Okay, so that's the PHP config. So what we have to do now is we have to restart the Apache server in order for all the modules to become active. So just Apache 2 restart. You can see now that it gets that you get a message saying that the host cannot determine the service fully qualified domain name. You can change that by changing the host name in the hosts folder. So you can do that here. Host name. It's called SecureSuite. Okay, so that's fine. And if I do nano hosts, so when I change that to SecureSuite, and also to 168.0.204, which is the IP address, just name it SecureSuite. Then you should not have that message anymore. So finally, configuring the SQL backend. So that's going to be for MySQL or PostgreSQL. So let's start with MySQL. So we have to do a couple of things for MySQL. So first thing is to grant all privileges to the database users so that they can access the database remotely. Now, if for some reason you've forgotten the root password, let me also show you the process how to reset the root password. So what we have to do here is we have to first stop the servers. MySQL service, and then we have to start the MySQL daemon, and we have to skip the ground table, so we're not checking whether user is allowed to get access to a database. So we're going to use the following command: daemon. We're going to skip the ground tables. And we can also skip networking. So once that is started, we should be able to access the database. There you go. We have to use the MySQL database because that's where the user privileges and the users are stored. And so we're now going to update the user password, the root password. So it's update user set password equals and then uppercase. And now we're going to add the new password. Just give it a simple password. User equals root. That should be it. Okay. Flushing privileges. And then quit the CLI. Now we're going to stop the MySQL daemon. And we're going to restart it. Service. Okay, so now we should be able to access the database. -p. Yes, and we're in. So what we can do now is we can grant the privileges to the database, to the user. Okay, so we're going to grant the privileges. All privileges to the user. At all hosts. Identified by the password. Flushing privileges. And we should be set for the access rights. In order for MySQL to allow remote connections, we have to change the configuration file. So for this, we go to the /etc MySQL folder, and we are going to edit the configuration file. So what we're going to do is we're going to search for binding. Basically what we have to do here, so originally the bind address here was unmarked, so this one was activated, so this would only allow local connections. So if we now mark it, MySQL will allow connections from also from LAN adapters from the network. So let's save this one, Control X, and then what we have to do is to restart the MySQL service. And that's it for MySQL. So that's the whole configuration. For Postgresql, to allow remote access, we have to make some changes to some config files. So let me just show you which files they are. You can find them in the /etc, and then there's a Postgres folder. Sorry, let's go back. We're running version 9.3, and then there's a main folder here. So you can see here you've got the PostgreSQL conf and the pg_hba.conf, and we need to make some changes to those files. So what we need to do is we have to allow remote access, and we have to allow remote access for all IP addresses. So for all IP addresses, remote access is defined in the pg_hba. And what we also didn't do during the installation is set the root password. So the root user for PostgreSQL is called Postgres, so that's the username. So we have to change that as well. So, but let's first start with the remote access. So what we're going to do first is we're going to edit the PostgreSQL, and in this file we need to check the listen address. So what used to be here was this one was marked, and the asterisk that used to be localhost. So what we're going to do here is we're going to unmark it, and we're going to say that the listen address is wildcarded. So we are allowing all hosts to connect. That's the PostgreSQL conf, and then the second one is the PGHBA. We're going to edit that one, and what we need to do is we need to add a line, which I already did, which is this one here, IPv4 local connections. So what we're going to do is host all, and then you can see here wildcard IP address 0000/0. So with this line we're allowing all IP addresses to access the database. So that's the remote access, and the next thing that we have to do is set the root user password. Because we don't know the root user password, we can't really access the database. So what we have to do now is we have to kind of disable the password checking, so we can like access the database without password. So in order to do that, we have to edit the PGHBA conf file again, and we have to add a line here. So you can see the line here. So what we're not going to do here is the local. So if you log in locally from the CLI or from your local station, we trust all the connections. So with this line, you don't need to enter any passwords. So this is a tricky line as well. So this is temporary measurement. So once we've set the PostgreSQL password, we're going to remove this line again, so that the security is back in action again. So, but that's done. And what we then can do is we can connect to the database with the local command line, Postgres, and that's it. So we're connected here. And what we need to do is we need to change the user password, and that's what we're going to do with the following command. So we say alter user Postgres with password, and then we're gonna put a new password in. I'll just make it simple. And that's it. And then with Control D, we can exit the PostgreSQL. And now what we have to do is we have to remove that line again, or just mark it. You can mark it. Save it with Control O, Control X, and then we're going to restart the service. And as a final check, we can see if we can get remote connection to the database server. So we're going to add a server. Just give it a name, SecureSuite. I'm using a tool called PG Admin for this. This is something that you can download from the internet freely. So my IP address 204. So username Postgres, password. And you can see I've got remote connectivity here. There's one database in here, it's called Postgres. And you can see that my remote connectivity is working. So that's it for the database connectivity remotely. So if you are installing the application on the same server as your have your database installed, you don't need to perform these actions. So this is only for when you have the application calling for a remote database. And then the final part is setting the scheduler service. So we're going to cover that as well. On Linux host, we're using the cron daemon to do the scheduling. So what we can do is we can edit the Crontab file. That's done through the following command, crontab -e, and then we can edit it. So what I've already done is I've already edited a line. So what this line means is that every 5 minutes, and the other asterisks, they are based on the minute, hour, day, month, etc. So they're all asterisks. So this means every 5 minutes we have to do a wget on an HTTP file here, which is the scheduler PHP. So every 5 minutes the scheduler PHP is called. So once you've added that line, you just save the file and you exit, and the scheduler will automatically pick up that line. So this concludes the installation of the Ubuntu host. The next step is to install the application, which is very straightforward, and that's covered in another short video. Thanks for watching this.